Greetings, lovely people. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fluency podcast. Today, we are experimenting with a new format, and you are going to get part one of an interview that we conducted with my friend and singing holistic coach, Valerio Lysander. Ramps,
Hello, guys. Welcome. Yes, first of its kind and exciting it was. We spoke about Valerio's language learning journey.
that's right, yes. And he spent some time in my home city of London many years ago. We talked about how that helped him with his English, particularly. It was a really interesting conversation, really nice, interesting guy, lovely to listen to, great rhythm, very calm and relaxing voice. So we think this is going to be a really interesting episode for you. Welcome, Valerio, to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hi,
Yeah.
Liam.
Hi.
Welcome, man.
Ram. Hello, Ram.
How's it? How's it?
What I would like to get started with today is you have had many experiences of speaking English, but can you just give us a bit of background? When did you start to learn English, for example?
I started in middle school. It's like most people in Italy. Actually, to be fair, I studied when I was listening to Spice Girls in primary school.
Okay.
And yeah, I remember asking my mom like the meaning of a few words. And yeah, I can say I started with the Spice Girls actually.
I can imagine that was quite an interesting conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I realized that I understood the meaning of some of the songs like a couple of years ago. When I was
Hmm.
like for my whole life, it was like just some words actually I had no idea. I learned the songs wrong
Right.
when I was a kid, and
Hmm.
then through my life, I started actually listening to the lyrics, and I was like, I didn't know this was what this song was about this. I was quite shocked for some, but yeah. And then I studied academically in middle school, and then in uni I did 1 year of English. I
Hmm.
studied mediazione linguistico-culturale, which is linguistic and cultural mediation. And you could choose two languages. And I started with French and English, but after a year of English was like, this is nothing new. And then I studied French and Chinese, and that's it. And then I moved to London, and that's where I my English got a boost, I guess.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to come to London in a minute. I'd like to go back. Just I want to dive a little deeper into what your experience of learning English at school was like. What kind of system did you have? How did you respond to that system? What did you notice about your motivation, that side of things?
Most students didn't respond really well, although like we study grammar and literature, so
Hmm.
it's I think the system can work. But I guess like I was very interested in English music
Hmm.
and like movies and stuff. And then I started watching movies in the original versions without subtitles, without understanding anything, and checking Wikipedia after I finished them to be sure of what I just saw. I guess like in Italy, we don't usually have native speakers teaching in public schools.
Hmm.
Maybe that could be an issue, but yeah, it works for me. But also, I know that it didn't work for some people. So I
Hmm.
guess my passion for the language helped.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you know what kind of learner you are?
No,
Like auditory, visual, or kinesthetic?
I think generally I'm visual in
Okay.
my system of just not in and only in language learning.
Usually we have elements of all three, but we have a dominant one. I'm very visual. I'm also very kinesthetic. So I need to do things in order to learn them, to remember them, to, engage with the process. Okay, fantastic. So tell us about your time in London. How
Yeah,
did that change things for you?
so I moved because I'm a songwriter, and I was writing in English when I studied, and so I decided to go to London for a couple of months. That was the initial idea, to improve my language, and then I stayed for 8 years. And while I was there, I guess what improved, like improved my language was the fact that I was working in an English-speaking environment, obviously, but there were a lot of British people or native speakers anyway. They were using a language that was obviously more, I would say, sophisticated, but not in the sense of that they were up from all like layers of society, but
Right.
more
Mon,
refined in a way.
okay, natural. Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Mm.
helped. And also I bought this book that was very helpful for me called Get Rid of Your Accent, which
Oh, okay.
does what the title says. Um, Now that I'm back in Italy, I think that it got a little bit worse because I still speak English. I am a vocal coach and I teach in English here online. But yeah, obviously most of my conversations are in Italian. And also at the beginning of my time in London, I avoided contacts with Italian people because of I wanted to use my language most of the time.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I think that really helped.
That must have been fairly challenging to do. There were quite a few Italians in London, after all.
Yeah, but I managed. I managed
Yeah.
for 4 years. I had no Italian friends, maybe like
Wow.
two. But I also had a lot of because what happens sometimes that's what I saw in my experience that if you if you get that Italian circle, then
Hmm.
it's really hard to get out. So I'm glad that I forced myself to make friends with people from elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very common thing, but particularly in a city like London, which is very big, and it's very difficult to build and maintain relationships there. Once you find a group of people that you're comfortable with, you generally stick with that group. And when you're living in a foreign country, very often the comfort of being with people who are from home is quite
Exactly.
strong.
That's what I felt like at some point. I had a flatmate from Italy, from
Mhm.
near Venice, and she was like my first friend, probably, first Italian friend. And that's when and she's also a very good friend of mine now. And I felt that what you said, like the
Mm.
feeling of home, shared cultural background, if you know what I mean. So after that, I opened up to friendship with Italians.
Right.
But at that point, my English was okay.
Yeah, I mean, after 3 or 4 years of living in London and
Yeah,
spending a lot of time with native speakers, then I would hope it improved. Yeah.
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 Question of the day, lovely audience. What is it that you do not like about your accent in English? Don't forget to write in the comment section.
So you mentioned earlier that you were writing songs in English. When did you start to do that?
I started maybe around 15, 16. I wouldn't say my first attempts were good.
Do you still have them?
I still have them. I mean, probably. I don't know where they are. I recorded them
Right.
on a cassette, but
Oh, cassette
I,
tape.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have anything to listen to it with. So
Yeah.
in
Well,
Prosody, I
cassette's
have
making a
to.
comeback,
Yeah,
apparently in England.
yeah,
Or
for
Gen Z
beginners.
love the retro tech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So started writing and singing in English 15, 16. When did you decide that that was a path you wanted to explore further?
My parents were singers and musicians, so it had been in my life somehow since birth. They sang covers at weddings and funerals and this kind of stuff. I don't know. I guess like I liked listening to music and some specific songwriters, and I wanted to be like them. I guess that's where how it started, and then when I started, I liked the feeling of it, and writing songs would help me process, suffering and um, things in my life, and yeah, and I guess I was quite good at it, at least singing at the time, maybe not
Mhm.
writing.
Mhm.
Uh, Yeah,
What would you say was the biggest challenge that you had writing in another language?
even now, I sometimes I ask native speakers to just check if everything's fine grammar wise,
Right.
because I always have that, especially now that I'm in Italy. Some When I was in London, I was dreaming in English and thinking in English, and I would
Mm.
write my diary in English, and everything would feel more like smoother. Um, but yeah, sometimes I have that doubt. I'm like, is this actually good? Does it sound English enough? Because it may be correct, but it could be Italianized, if you know what I mean.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. No, I see what you mean. And plus now that you're back in Italy, the Italian brain is the dominant one again
Yeah.
in that sense. So,
Although, like now, neither of the languages are perfectly complete, because sometimes I speak in English, in Italian, and words don't come. Like, I have to say words in English because I forgot the Italian word. So
right.
it's really annoying. I have no one language that is self-sufficient.
Okay. That's interesting how there are spaces in your memory where for certain words the English one is comes out first or the Italian one comes out first if you're speaking English. And
Yeah, like for example, for for years, when I had my gigs in Italy, people probably thought I was stupid because when I was introducing the the songs, it would take me so long to be able to explain what it was about, or to introduce them, because I was so used to do it in on stage in English, that
Mhm.
I wasn't was it was a it was a part of the language that I would only use in English, and so in Italian I had to rebuild the sentences and what I would say, 'cause obviously there's some things that are very idiomatic, of like, especially when you're on stage,
Mhm.
very interesting, very frustrating sometimes. 'Cause luckily I have friends here that also speak English, so I can just say the English word and that will be fine. But when I
Mhm.
go to therapy, that's really, it's also interesting because when a word doesn't come, then you have to find other ways to explain it, and then that opens up more about explaining who you are, I guess. But that's in therapy. When I'm outside of therapy, it is frustrating.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think we've all had those moments, especially when the word is on the tip of your tongue, so it's so close. You're like,
Yeah.
but to have that when you're switching back and forth between languages is it's really challenging.
Just a question here, like how useful was Italian in learning English?
There's a lot of English words that come from French, Latin, and Italian. Sometimes I would just make up words in English from Italian, like trying to
Yeah, sort of it
transpose,
Englify. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
and I find out that they are actually English words, and sometimes they are more sophisticated than, like, sometimes English speakers don't know those words because they are more elegant or whatever.
Yeah.
Or yeah,
um so yeah, so it definitely helps in that way, but maybe just that the grammar is fairly different, so
It's quite a different thing. Yeah, I think you're right. I've met several people, obviously, with what we do, some of which obviously are Italian, but other Latin-based language speakers, Spanish, French. And yeah, I've found myself in a few situations where I didn't know the word, but through context, I was able to understand it.
hmm.
And I remember one of the first times I spoke to maybe an Italian or a French person. After that conversation, I was like, wow, they spoke the language in such a formal way. But this is way before I started teaching. I was doing something completely else before.
Hmm.
Is when I moved here, I understood why some of the people that I'd met up to that point in my life, who were either Italian, Spanish, or French speakers tended to use more formal words, words like timid. I started using that word because of living here. I would normally just say shy. Now, they're not exactly the same thing, timid and shy, but most English speakers in general English, we use those words interchangeably. I'm not English and I'm also not native. I'm bilingual. So, like many other bilingual people, and I think maybe other English speakers who are not British, when we use those words, we usually associate it with high society in England. So I
Mhm.
would use them sort of ironically, like, oh, timid. Oh, we have some tea. It's always like taking the piss of somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I was just, Liam doesn't like it when when I do the English accent because apparently I do it so badly. But potato,
Yeah,
potato. Yeah.
you did the guffaw very well. The guffaw is the kind of sound, isn't it? Yeah. Um,
I think I do this facial expression pretty well as well. There's like just thinking like we will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them on the, kind of just kind of stiff. It's about not moving the lip. I guess that's where the stiff
it's
upper
the
lip thing
stiff upper
comes from.
lip. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Well, great. Yes, thank you. Yes, that's
Yes,
very kind of you.
it's from the BBC English when everyone used to talk like this. Yeah.
There's a really
Um,
funny video on the spaghetti harvest, and the guy speaks very much like that.
yeah.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Have you seen that, Valerio?
No, actually.
This is a classic piece of BBC footage from I think it was back in the 50s. It's in black and white, and it was footage of Italians harvesting spaghetti from trees, done as an April Fool's joke on the whole British nation.
I love it.
It's very funny. It's very funny, but it's got that because the BBC was built and began in the 50s. Back then, the way that they spoke English, especially on on television, on the radio, was this, oh, yes, everything is very nasal. It's from up the top of the voice, and you don't move the top of your lip very much unless you really, really have to. Yeah.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. And while you're at it, maybe share it with a friend. Let's get back to the conversation. Yeah. Well, and so with language, and this is, I think, most people who speak several languages like yourself, you figure out very quickly that once you understand one language from one language group, it becomes easier to learn other languages and several other language groups, right? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You speak English, Italian, French, and Mandarin, I believe. Yes.
Yes, and Portuguese and Spanish, and I'm learning Chinese right now. But Chinese, I graduated in Chinese, but also that was 15 years ago,
Okay.
and I haven't really used it. So I surprise myself when I like when I love Chinese food, and when I go to Chinese restaurants, I pick up some words. But the problem with Chinese is that the grammar is quite simple, but learning the words is really hard. So that's what I'm like. And you have to keep it fresh and keep learning. And I think that when I finished uni, I I knew around 700 words, but to be able to have a normal conversation, you need at least 3,000.
Wow.
So yeah, I know people who have kept studying and lived in China, but you need to study it like 10 years continuously to be able to have an fluent conversation, I guess.
Mm.
Although I
But
was in Beijing for a few months and I could have conversations, but I couldn't speak about, I don't know, politics or psychology, philosophy.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
More
get
complex
into
conversations.
complex, deep, and meaningful conversations. That's
Yeah.
what we like to call them. Okay. Yeah, I think my understanding of Mandarin is one of the greatest challenges is the pronunciation because the the pinyin system, there are a lot of core sounds that are same, but it's the intonation pronunciation completely changes what that word
Yeah.
means.
Yeah. So there are 4 tones, and for example, the syllable ma, ma, If you say ma means mother. If you say ma means horse. If you say ma, it means swearing or like it's a swear word. So yeah, it could get very complicated.
You could say something very horrible about
Yeah,
somebody's mother or
yeah,
horse, for that
exactly.
matter.
Well, Italian itself is full. I mean, intonation is a very big part of speaking Italian. I'm sure that came in handy, right?
So intonation is every language has intonation. It's just that maybe the from an English speaker point of view, um, Italian has a very undulated intonation, but English has uh, intonation as well. It's just that maybe it's a bit more contained. So I don't know what helped with the tones, but with like the Chinese tones. But I mean, we all you're able to understand if a sentence is a question, even if you don't reverse the words as you do in English. So you are able to understand if a word has a tone or another, and you're able to. If you can sing, probably you can perceive the difference in intonation. So it takes a while in Chinese to get used to the fact that it's within a word, it's within a syllable. It wasn't particularly difficult for me, and I know people that think the same. Some other people just spoke without any intonation, and in fact, when we all went to China, we did a part of our third year in China with uni, and like some Chinese people couldn't understand some of my schoolmates, but classmates.
You
Yeah.
bring up an interesting point about phonetics and intonation, something I'm interested in with your when you're writing in English. How did you come to terms with writing songs in English, being that we have different pronunciation mechanisms going on, like connected speech, where we don't necessarily say every word as it should be said when it's written?
The only difference that I see in writing English and Italian, it's not so much the pronunciation. It's more about the fact that English has shorter words. You most words are one or two syllables, whereas in
Okay.
Italian they're much longer. So the stress of the word usually in Italian is not at the end. We have a few words where it is at the end. So if the musical phrase has a stress at the end, it sounds really weird in Italian. Whereas in English, if you have a one syllable word, you can put it at the end and have a stress there and it would be fine. So I think it's harder to write in Italian convincingly in Italian because of that. I don't think the pronunciation itself is an issue. Actually, when I teach singing, I say to English speakers, I say you can speak English, but you have to sing in Italian because we have to. When you sing, usually, especially on the higher notes, you need to open the mouth more.
Hmm.
Whereas, as you said, you could speak English with your mouth closed, and it would still work. Whereas in
And people
Italy,
often do.
yeah, exactly. Whereas in Italy, we open our vowels are much wider.
Yeah, my experience of listening to Italian speakers is that often when speaking at a natural speed, it feels like the lips are not they're going it's like a machine gun.
Yeah.
So I think certainly English people can do the same. When you're speaking naturally in your own language,
Mm.
there is less enunciation,
Mm.
which it can be challenging for people who don't understand to not see the mouth making all of the
Yeah.
correct movements, right?
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is that we have seven vowels,
Hmm.
whereas in English, if I'm not wrong, there are 21 sound vowels. Obviously, there are five letters, but
Yeah. Yeah, if you include diphthongs, yeah.
you have a lot of your, like, for example, you use a lot of schwa. So,
The
and you
schwa.
can
I
do
love the
that.
schwa. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that very easily with your mouth closed. Whereas in Italian,
Yeah.
if you say ah, I have to say ah. I can say It
Yeah.
doesn't sound Italian. Then some people may speak like that, but if you speak correctly, it wouldn't be like that.
Mm.
But yes, there are a lot of stressed people in Italy that don't open their jaws. But the language itself wouldn't want that. Whereas in English, it could be easier to do.
And to go back to the question, is that something that you consider with your songs, is having that weak intonation, using the schwa for the shorter words so that they connect easier to the more important words? Or do you just, because of the amount of time that you spent speaking, writing, living in English, that's just something that comes naturally to you now?
No, I don't think I think about that.
You don't think
No,
it's just,
yeah, it just comes. Yeah, it's just like, for example, one thing I struggled at the beginning is rhymes. Some words would rhyme. Like to me, like they sound like they do, but then because you have so many more vowels than in Italian. I remember I wrote this song. Can't remember now the original rhyme, but I wrote this song and I was like super happy. And at the time, I was seeing a private English teacher in Italy, and I was using her to correct my lyrics as well.
Mhm.
And she was like, "This doesn't rhyme with this," and I was completely sure that it did. Maybe it was something like have and love, and to me it was ah, that was an ah sound, and but obviously it wasn't. um so that's the only like sound related issue that I would think about when, yeah, related to your question.
Sorry, to just to jump in on the subject of phonetics, how important for you as someone who's learning, and it sounds like you've just, your entire life you've dedicated to some degree to it, to learning languages. So clearly it's a passion of yours. How important is the sound of the language in your learning process?
Yeah, I think that actually that's the thing that I like the most about it. And even with languages that I have no intention in learning, or actually, I started learning a lot of languages, but then I did like, 10 lessons and then stopped because I do want to, I want to get at, it's really interesting for me to see how we all speak differently, and how the etymology of words and where they come from, and the sound of the languages is something really interesting for me.
So that, of course, brings us to the end of part one of today's interview show. Thanks for watching.
it's been great. Tune in for part two next week, where we talk more about phonetics, prosody, timbre, and how to use your voice properly for presentation.